Hi, my name is Christine. I'm a demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and I wanted to kind of do a Stamping 101 video, which kind of shows you how to get started if you've never stamped before, and maybe if you are a regular stamper, you'll still get some tips that can be useful. So I'm using the Whisper White note cards and envelopes for my card bases. They are thick cardstock, so they stand up nicely once they're folded. People can display them. And they come with envelopes. There's 20 in a pack. And most importantly, they're also pre-scored. What that means is they've got, I don't know if it shows on the video, there is a little valley here along the paper. You can score your own paper by using a ruler and a bone folder, but it's so much easier when it's done for you. So the basics of getting started, where your little valley is the front of your card. And the little dip or mountain, that is what you're folding into when you want to fold your card. So that's that. Then you want to choose a stamp set that you like. So preferably something with images. This one I'm choosing the Painted Poppies. I think it is a beautiful stamp set. It's got these nice line images. It's got some abstract kind of splotches, some leaves. You can color this in with ink or with markers or with pencils. There's a lot you can do with this one. But it has no words, so you need a sentiment stamp set, and that's where the Peaceful Moments comes in. I really like this one because it's got your happy birthday, it's got a sympathy, thank you, wishing you every happiness this special day will bring, thinking of you with all my heart, congratulations, and a few others. So it's really a stamp set that you can use for many, many, many different occasions. The other alternative is to choose a stamp set that you love that's got both images and sentiments. So we will get started. So for this first card, I'm using a slightly larger image. You always need an acrylic block to put your stamp on. Because this image is larger, I am using a larger block. When you're starting out, typically our stamps in the description will tell you what size blocks they recommend. Typically you can get away with block D, but like I said, the stamp's a little bit larger, so I'm going to start with a larger block. So one thing with the note cards, if you stamp directly on them, you can totally do that. However, if you do make any kind of error, you know, you kind of have to grab a new note card. So to avoid kind of paper waste, what I like to do is, this is just regular Whisper White cardstock. I've cut it just slightly smaller than my card base, and actually this one is a little bit smaller because I wanted to do something else. So the card bases for the note cards are 3.5 by 5. I have cut this sheet of Whisper White to 3 by 4 3/4. So I'm going to stamp just a little bit off the image on the bottom so that my flowers are growing onto the page and you don't see the division of the stems and where they kind of start. I clean my stamps with the Simply Chamois over here. He looks really stained and dirty, but he's not. Just run it under water and rinse it, and the ink kind of just falls out of it. Alternately, you can use baby wipes, are super effective. Even a damp paper towel will work. So I'm going to set that aside for now, and we'll bring in our color. So poppies, you know, typically remind us of Remembrance Day, especially as I'm filming this in November, right before Remembrance Day. But they are more than Remembrance Day flowers, and they come in a variety of colors. For these ones, I'm using Magenta Madness, which is a really bright, bold pink. And I'm using Granny Apple Green, which is another lovely bright green. So the image is completely abstract. I'm just adding splotches of color here, approximately where the flowers are. And I can always add more if I feel the need. So I'm just rinsing my block. I'm going to go with the Granny Apple Green next. So again, I'm not smashing my stamp into my block. I'm just gently tapping to get the ink. And I'm moving my splotch around a little bit so that it's not the same splotch everywhere. Just gonna put one more on the bottom. And I'm always using a, you know, scrap paper underneath my project because, as you can see, I'm making a bit of a mess. I don't know if you can see this purple splotch down at the bottom, but you'll see why that's there as we go along. Now, before I finish this front piece, I'm going, like I said, I tend to not stamp right onto the cards, but there are exceptions. So I purposefully cut the Whisper White cardstock that we're doing our main image on a little smaller than the card base. And oh dear, saved. Okay, so another good tip is to always close your ink when you're not using it so that you don't fly your project into it. So the reason that I cut this paper smaller was intentionally so that I could add some color under the image, and you'll see it'll have a really nice effect. So I'm not going crazy here, I'm just adding a little bit of color at the top and bottom. You could add a lot more if you wanted to and do a whole border, but I'm not doing that for this card. And then I'm going to add a sentiment. We'll set the card base aside again. We're going to make a happy birthday card for this one. And I'm going to put that in black so that it really pops. And we'll put that up here. Put my sentiment away, and I'll put my ink away. And one last thing I want to do before we put the card together is just bling it up a little bit. To do that, I'm using the Rhinestones Basic Jewels. They're just, as soon as I can open it, they're just silver and clear. And they just add a little pop of interest to the card. Now you can pick these guys up with tweezers. I really like my Take Your Pick tool, which has a few different uses. One of which has this little picky guy at the bottom, and I just find that an easier way to grab my sticky gems. These are already sticky, so you don't have to worry about adding glue or anything. You just stick them on. And I'm just trying to line these up, and I'm just doing a tiny little row because it's a birthday card, and hooray. So I'm just doing 3 of those, and I'll set these gems aside. Now we need to put this on our card base, and I'm going to do that by using dimensionals. You could use, you know, liquid glue or paper glue. Dimensionals are double-sided foam pieces. They just, as they're called, dimension, they just kind of lift up your layer a little bit and just give it a little bit more visual interest. So I'm a big fan of these guys. So now I'm just taking off the backs so that they're sticky, and we'll put that on the card. So this is super simple, as you can see, very quick, and a nice way to use these stamps. So I'm lining it up at the bottom where I want it. I've got kind of even on each side, straight line on the bottom, dropping it down and just pressing slightly. And there's our happy birthday card. Now, this looks lovely, but I also like to do a little bit on the inside of my cards. So I'm going to use the same image we used before so that it coordinates nicely. I'm going to pull out the big block again. Now, because these are note cards and they're not as big as a standard card, I don't want to take away all the writing space. So I'm just going to put this down on the bottom. And I'll just leave it black. It just leaves a nice little finished image. And then we've got the envelope, which we don't want to send through the post naked. So I'm just going to stamp on the back of the envelope so that, you know, we don't take away from the front and the space we need to write our addresses and put the stamps on and all of that. So just a nice stamped image on the back. And you have a nice coordinated envelope inside and top. I'll set that aside. So for my second card, we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to pull in my stamp and blends. So again, we've got our card base, which is pre-cut, and I'm pulled in a white Whisper White sheet again. It is cut a little bit bigger. It's going to cover the surface of our card and just leave like an 1/8 of an inch border all around. Now you can see that I actually made a bit of a mistake earlier on this card, so I am going to use it. We're covering it up. This won't show. So again, why I like to use another layer when I'm stamping. So for this one, I'm going to put this image back. And we're going to use this lovely flower with a little bud. So I'm just positioning that on my block. Again, I'm going to use the black. If you're just starting out, especially, black is like the most basic of colors to start with. It's nice and crisp and clear and you know, super versatile. And actually, you know what? Before I put this away, as you know, I want to embellish my card and my the inside of my card and my envelope. So I'm just going to do that now and get it done so I don't have to go back. So for this one, I haven't folded my card, but this is the inside. And we're just going to repeat the image here. And just to add a wee bit of interest, I'm going to put the flower up top. So now I'm going to set my card base aside. We'll do the envelope as well. Because this image is quite narrow and doesn't take up a ton of space, I'm just going to put it on the front. It still leaves plenty of room to write our addresses and put the stamps. So, you know, set those aside and we'll focus on the card front. Before I put my black away, I will do my sentiment. For this one, I'm going to do a thank you card. Oof. So I'm just going to stamp that down here. And now I'm going to put my black away before I put my fingers in it. And I'll just put my sentiment back. Now, for this one, we are using the same colors as we used in the previous card, but we're going to use the Stamp and Blends markers. These are alcohol-based markers, and they're just lovely to work with. They come in a dark and a light of each shade, which allows you to kind of give a little bit of depth to your cards just by blending both shades. So I'm starting with my dark, and I'm not being super precise here. I'm just adding a little bit of it. And then I'm going to pull in my lighter shade. If you've seen images of poppies before, they're almost translucent. They're so thin at the petals. So I'm kind of trying to lighten that up. This does not have to be perfect, especially with this type of image because it's so abstract to begin with. So I just want to add a little bit of color in. And I'll do the same with our little bud. There we go. And then for the stem and the leaf, I'm just going to add a little bit of the dark Granny Apple Green by that line. And these markers also have like a paintbrush tip on one side and a more traditional marker tip on the other. So it almost feels like you're painting. I really like working with these. It is quite delicate when you're doing a fine line though, to try to, stay within it. And now I'll pull in the light shade and finish that leaf. And I'm just running over top of the dark line that I made just to kind of blend that in. A really neat thing with the Stampin' Blends, which is not going to show you, but I did go outside the lines, so I do want to use this. This is a color lifter. It will only lift the alcohol marker. It will not lift the stamped image because it's a different type of ink. There we go. So I'm just using a little bit of that to lift off my little mistake, and it will be gone. So we'll set our markers aside. And this card is almost complete, but again, I really like adding a little bit of bling, so we're going to do that. And, oh yeah, one other neat thing before I put the markers aside. These gemstones can be colored using alcohol blends. Check this out. One thing I love about Stampin' Up's products is that you can, everything coordinates. So it makes it really easy to pick a color scheme and create a project. And these are already dry. Like, I just put that on and it's good to go. So I'm just going to randomly put these down, and it changes the look of the gems completely by adding that little bit of color. The blends come in almost every color of ink that we've got, and the papers also do the same. So that's that. And we're just going to put this onto our card base. And I'm going to do that with liquid glue. So that's our inside. We're going to do the front. We're going to cover up this black smudge that I made a mistake on earlier. I don't like to waste my products, so if I do make a mistake, I try to find a way to fix it. It's another nice use for gems. If you have a slight mix-up with an ink splotch or something, it's really a nice way to cover them up. So I like to use my liquid glue when I'm gluing layers on, just because it doesn't dry quite as quick, and you have just a little bit of time to move that around if you need to, so that you've got the paper where you want it. So I'm just going to fold that up and use my bone folder to make the crisp line. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the reason we score paper is so that when we fold it, it doesn't crack or break, and you have a nice, crisp, professional looking fold. So that's our thank you card with the envelope, and cute little image on the inside as well. And for the third card I wanted to do, we are bringing in a little bit of cardstock. And, you know, these are poppies, and it is near Remembrance Day. I do want to make a commemorative card. So I'm using card base again. We've got our envelope. This time I've cut the Whisper White thin cardstock, or regular weight cardstock, smaller. And we're going to layer it onto a piece of Poppy Parade cardstock before we mount it to our card. So I'm going to keep this image super simple. We're going to start with the black, and we're going to use the big poppy. I should also mention that if you've got a die cutting machine, there are the most gorgeous coordinating dies with this set. There we go. Put my image this way. I love the center detailing on these flowers. And now I'm going to use my big image here, and we're going to use the Poppy Parade ink so that all matches. So this will not fit the entire flower. It is meant to be an abstract splotch. So there it is. And I'm keeping this card quite simple intentionally because it is more of a commemorative card. I'm not going to go over the top with it. I'm going to stamp my sentiment in black. I've been having a bit of trouble lining this sentiment up. I'm just going to test it out. And that is definitely why I'm having trouble lining it up. Okay. So another reason to have your scratch paper is to be able to test things out. And there we go. Before you put it to your actual project, it saves you from sometimes having to redo or fix or whatnot. So for this one, actually, I do want to add a little bit to the envelope and the card. I'm not going to use the black, I'm going to use the red. And I'm going to pull back the, pull out again the large image. Bah, stuff's flying. Okay, I'm just going to do the back of the envelope. And this time we'll do a red copy. And on the inside, I'm just going to do a little bit in the corner, just to dress it up a little bit. And we'll leave it at that. So we'll put our card together. I'm going to pull out my liquid glue again, and we're going to put down our poppy layer. So a little of this glue goes a long way. You don't need a ton of it. In fact, I've got way too many now that, way too much now that I've said that. And then we'll do our smaller layer. With our image, and that'll be that card done. So I'm just going to center that on. And there we go. So I'll just fold that to finish it. And I find this a rather strong image. Always remember it's definitely commemorative, and I quite like that. So we've got our envelope. I'll just pull out the earlier projects we did so that you can see all three. So 3 very different ways to use this, this lovely stamp set, and not all of them commemorative. So it's definitely got a lot of uses. So thank you for watching this video. Please let me know if you have any questions, reach out. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would be grateful if you would. And have a great day. Thanks.